The problems with our existing generation of wind and solar technology is that they still remain relatively high cost in comparison to conventional technologies. Now, part of that is, of course, that we don't necessarily account for the full costs of the conventional technologies. We don't have a price on carbon, for example, so we aren't reflecting the full costs of society of using coal, natural gas, or petroleum. But even that set aside, it's still a problem of cost, so there's really no alternative in the near term but to subsidize these newer fuels so that we can eventually get the costs down with greater dissemination of them and have them truly able to compete in the marketplace on their own. As you look farther out, there are some so-called nanotechnologies in solar that offer the promises of very cheap power. We have concentrated solar power stations, which are already in a handful of locations around the world. But the significance of these plants is that they can be used for baseload electricity and peaking as well. So they really make solar not an intermittent resource anymore. They're also based on being able to capture the sun rays when the solar units are working and store the power for when the sun isn't there. So these types of things, wind is certainly taking off around the world, actually has made many more advances than solar has in terms of its absolute contribution to global energy supplies. And there are tremendous wind resources in many locations of the world, both onshore and increasingly in various parts of the world, we're looking for offshore wind farms. These are controversial themselves because, you're talking about many very, very large windmills, 400 or 500 feet high in the air. And since they're often in sites that compete with recreational and other uses, they're not free in the sense of not being subject to political debate. Well, there are other obstacles that certain regulatory jurisdictions, for example, in the United States, will argue that their responsibility as regulators is to deliver reliable, the cheapest power available to the consumers for which they're responsible for overseeing the rates. And they will argue that while it may have social benefits, that wind and solar very likely may raise rates in the near term, and so you get some regulators that simply aren't as vigorous in championing these newer resources as they might be if they didn't see their mandate as different from a mandate to get as much renewable into the system as possible.